Okay, so I'll go ahead and call the October 14th Mule Deer Enhancement Oversight Committee, Mule Deer Enhancement Program Subcommittee, Lander County meeting to order, or October 15th. I'll call it to order at 4:21 p.m. And we'll take roll call real quick. Amber Atten.
I'm here.
Great. Bert Ramos.
I'm here.
Chris Jasmine.
Technologically challenged, but present.
Okay. Jeremy Lutz. Jerry Annis.
Present.
Marshall Evertson. Ted McElvain. And Rochelle Peppers. Okay, we will move on to item number 2, which is the approval of the agenda. And so does anybody have any alterations they want to make to the agenda? If not, does somebody want to make a motion to approve the agenda?
This is Jerry.
I would make a motion to approve the agenda. That's Chris.
Jerry will second it.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say aye. All right, motion passes. Okay, so I believe we needed to take public comment before we voted on that. However, we don't have any attendees from the public. So if for some reason they're on there and I don't see them, what we're doing is if you do have public comment, please raise your hand virtually and I will look on the attendees list and we will just take comment that way. Okay, so moving on to item number 4, member announcements and correspondence. So I guess the only announcement I have is that I was able to chat with both Jeremy and Casey Shedden from the BLM about a few of our questions. And I will, I guess, save that discussion for when we get to actually talking about project proposals, so I don't take up too much time in the correspondence section. Are there any other announcements or correspondence? All right, we can go ahead and move on to item number 5, which is actually discussing these proposals and taking action potentially on them. So I appreciate you all meeting on such short notice about this. We got kind of hit with a deadline and not much time between being told about the deadline and the actual deadline. So we'll hopefully be able to talk about some of these issues and then look at some projects we can do in the short term before we have our discussion about these larger scale projects we talked about last time that we're going to need a lot more information and a lot more input from BLM specialists on. So I'll go ahead and get to kind of what I talked about with Jeremy and Casey, and they'll hopefully answer some of our questions. I know there's still going to be a lot of unanswered questions, but hopefully this at least gives us a start. So I guess with respect to that NEPA conversation we had, like if we can add on to any existing NEPAs out there, there currently aren't any that we could, except under the fire ESNRs. And that would be in the Argenta area, the Elephant Head area, and Gilbert area. And that Elephant Head area does include Cooks Creek, but it sounds like BLM has already sprayed about 7,000 acres in addition to what NDOW has been working on, and they're going to be reseeding this year. So it sounds like that area has already had some expansion and addition on. So that probably wouldn't be the best place for us to focus. However, there is a district-wide EA that allows herbicide use and reseeding in areas with cheatgrass, as long as we reseed with a BLM approved mix. So that would be all of the Battle Mountain district. So we would have kind of a lot of areas we could look with that. So there's an easement or environmental assessment in place for that already. Then on Argenta, NDOW, BLM, and some private landowners have been partnering to spray and reseed up there. And last year they sprayed about 2,000 acres and they're seeding that this year. And they just sprayed 3,500 acres this year. So this is someplace we could potentially add on. So the EA authorizes up to 10,000 acres to be treated per year. And they've done most of their work on private. So I can show you, if I share my screen, where that work has taken place. So can everyone see this Google Earth image? I don't hear any no's, so.
Yep, we can see it.
Okay, awesome. So here's Battle Mountain over to the west, and then these 3 white squares are where they've done treatment on these private parcels, and these are each 1 square mile, so 640 acres each. And this is checkerboarded, so I turn that layer on. There's lots of BLM around there that we could potentially go in and kind of fill in the gaps there. Because I know they've done these 3, and I believe the other 3,500 acres is also on private. So I'll double check that for sure, but this could be someplace we could potentially help kind of increase the area that's getting treated. And this area is really important overwinter habitat for mule deer, both from Area 15 and Area 6. So it would benefit multiple herds. So that is a potential area we could focus on. And this area doesn't have horses, so.
And sorry, I couldn't quite make it out. Did you say those 3 parcels are private and have already been treated?
Yeah, these 3 white ones, I guess I could make them a better color since that's also white. I'll turn this land ownership off. Yeah, so these 3 parcels have already been treated with herbicide and they're seeding this year. And then they just sprayed an additional 3,500 acres in this area, but I'm not sure if those are other private parcels that they've added on to, or if they've resprayed certain areas in there. But like I said, with all this public land surrounding it, that would be kind of someplace we could get funding to expand the scope. And then just kind of with respect to costs, Jeremy said for herbicide application, including both the chemical itself and the application, it would be $10 to $15 per acre. And then for reseeding with a fixed wing, and that would be using a wildlife seed mix of grasses, kochia, and sagebrush, and that would be $70 to $90 per acre. So that's what would be, I guess, calculating into our proposal. And the timeline for this would be, I guess, with cheatgrass and having to do the herbicide application and then reseeding, it would be a 2-year process. If this were something going in just after a burn, we could do it in 1 year. And that would just be reseeding as long as there wasn't any cheatgrass or anything like that. So that's the information I got from Jeremy. And then from talking with Casey from the BLM, I guess one of the easiest things to implement would be fuel breaks, because they already have authorization for up to 32,000 acres of this in the district. And this would take place, it would basically be 300 feet on each side of an existing road or 2-track. And so we could implement those in areas that we think are at high risk for fire. So this might be something we could do in the Moses area to kind of help keep that area from burning on top of having horses. Or we could implement it in areas that we eventually want to go in and do PJ thinning. So that would basically just be a start to the thinning. We'd get it thinned on each side of the road. They'd go in and masticate. And then they can do a further NEPA to go in a little bit more in that area. Then another potential project would be an exclosure. And I think BLM had talked about getting a crew together, but didn't get funding for that. So if we could get funding, they can contract out for an exclosure crew. And this would be an easy CX they could do under range improvement. And I think Casey said that would just take a few days to get approval on. So that would be something we could get fast approval on. And they're currently, Casey and Jeremy are working on a PJCX that will authorize up to 10,000 acres per project. And that would include thinning and reseeding. So that is kind of the information I got from both Jeremy and Casey to help direct us. Do you have a question, Marshall? You're still on mute.
There's the project that's going on down here at the North Tyobes with the mitigation from Cortez,
Mm-hmm.
the PJ thinning and the seeding on some of those fires and stuff like that. They actually put the exposures, the fences around a couple of those fires from a few years ago, things like that. And I know they've been actively reseeding and all that. Or because that's another winter range area, isn't it, for the Cortez Range and the Simpson Parks, the north end of the Tyobes?
Yeah, they'll go into the Toyabe Fingers. Yeah, and I think they've done, so Jeremy gave me a list of projects for the past few fiscal years. And I think for fiscal year 20, they had herbicide application on over 5,500 acres in the Toyabe Fingers. And they harrowed 600 acres in high thatch areas. And then they were contracting the seeding of 1,000 acres and aerial seeding applications of over 5,000 acres. And NGM provided seed for that. And then
I think that was their mitigation that they did for because the pits and expansions and everything. So they did a mitigation project for it, from what I understood.
Okay. Yeah, so it looks like there's a lot going on in the Toyabe Fingers right now. So I guess kind of where we want to go today is, could we potentially come up with some projects that we could get approved by the group and then submitted to the Oversight Committee for their evaluation? And I will bring up the form for that. And does anyone have any additions? So I have a note here to ask Jerry about his Saval conservation easement. So that would be, I'm not sure what we could add on to that, but I mean, that could be something we could also be involved with potentially.
Did you want me to make a comment about that, Sarah, at this time?
Yeah, could you fill us in on that?
Yeah, Jeremy must have suggested that. The Saval Ranch is looking into conservation easement with the Nature Conservancy as part of the Navy's mitigation program, REPI. They call it the REPI program in their airspace, which Moses is on the north end of that, and so they own close to 3,000 acres up there at the top of in the Fish Creek Mountains. So no decisions have been made, but the way it's understood that if you do enter into one of these easements, that with the Nature Conservancy, they will be very interested in projects to improve the habitat moving forward. So that's kind of where it's at. Nothing's going to happen there until late next year, probably, if it does. So in regard to that, I don't have any projects in mind for that that area, but there's a lot of potential. You know, I don't know the current status. Maybe Tom does, but I know that in years past, not real recently, NDOW has had some interest in looking into restocking Fish Creek, making it a real fish creek again. And I think there's some potential there. So that's pretty much the update there. That's what's going on in that part of the world at this time.
Okay, thanks, Jerry. Have you heard anything about that, Tom, about fish restocking?
I have not. I unfortunately don't have much time to pay attention to what's going on in the fish world.
Yeah, I bet it's been 8 or 10 years since they end out your fish biologists. I think most of them were out of the Fallon office, had shown some interest up there. I don't know. I do not know if they've been back or not. But there is a lot of potential in that part of the world for down the road.
Okay, yeah, we can keep that on our radar. So I will.
And
share
I will say that the Saval Ranch is very interested in being proactive in maintaining and developing habitat, both riparian, sage grouse, and wildlife in general. We've got it all up there.
Okay, so were there any other questions that we wanted to discuss about, I guess, based on last time's conversation? Like, do we want to look at a map again and maybe narrow down some areas to focus on with projects? I can pull up Google Earth again.
My thought process is to find an existing project to expand on, kind of like just overload it, right? But then there's a fear, I guess, also for me in that regard of a fire coming through and wiping out all that work. But like the Argenta Rim Winter Range, or the Fish Creek project. I don't know if I can't remember if you said there was anything going on over there, or the Tiobe Fingers one, where they're doing all that. They're doing a lot of work, and there's just a ton of deer that pile in there. And it's in the wintertime, and all that country is just loaded with PJs. And there's spots, I think, if you were to clean, I think they have been, even where I've seen over the last 10 years where they've done those thing projects down there, that if that can get cleared out more, the sagebrush isn't lost yet.
Right.
In that spot. So it's something that if they can just keep piling on and then do the reseeding out in the valleys, and then do that thinning where there's still sagebrush existing in the foothills, to me, it seems to, a pile on seems more efficient to me than trying something totally new,
Okay.
no matter where it's at, really.
Right. Yeah, that way we get more bang for the buck, essentially. So is that kind of the consensus with everyone, or does anyone have other opinions on that?
I'm in agreement 100%.
Can you hear me, Sarah?
Yeah, we can hear you.
My only thought, and I was just actually down in Tiobe Fingers part of the world today, with the BLM. That chunk of the world is still a big mess with the number of horses, although they're better on that side than they are on the other side of the mountain. The current permittee down there is still being asked to, take non-use or greatly reduce their cattle numbers, even though horse numbers are greatly over the top. And I fully agree with Marshall and Bert. I mean, there's more work to be done there, and I think it's important work that should be done. But I also want to be careful that we're not piling everything on one permittee and making them take additional cuts. Without somehow making sure we're putting plenty of pressure on the federal agencies as well to be addressing the horse problem in those allotments.
Well, I'll dovetail off of Chris's comment. This is Jerry. When we did our field trip, we went to the one spring that it had an exclosure around it, and which was totally wiped out by the horses in that area. That's part of the Fingers area, is it not? Yeah.
Yes, down on that summit.
Yeah,
what's that?
It's close by, Jerry. It's not right in that same area, but in that same general location.
Yeah.
The one south of there.
Yeah. So there's a lot of conversation about horses, not just at this committee, but it's raising its ugly head again. And a proposal I was going to bring forward is, and through the conservation district in Lander County, I've worked pretty closely with NDOW on some new and improved exclosures down at, we've administered some projects for them down on in the Smith Creek Ranch. And my thought is, if we could go into that spring that we know was tried to be protected, and the protection was totally wiped out by the horse population in that area, put in I'm not talking about a large exclosure, but just protect that spring with a new and improved exclosure system, and then maybe do some, as you recall, there's pretty good flow out of there. Maybe possibly doing some low impact armoring of the outflow of that area of that spring, and use that as a demonstration of what can be done properly, but how much damage these horses are doing. If we get that, if we put an exclosure there, do some seeding, maybe work with the permittee to graze it off, appropriately with the appropriate number of animals at the appropriate time, and just use it as a demonstration of what can be done if we have the ability to manage. So that was a project I was going to bring forward, actually.
Yeah, and so we actually stopped there today when I was down there with Sam Alt and Red Anderson from the BLM, and looked at that same exclosure. Sam Alt seemed very confident, and I don't believe BLM's on to verify, but Sam Alt seemed very confident that if that fence was put in originally, that they would have done the required amount of NEPA to get it approved, so that redoing any of those springs that have those dilapidated pipe rail exclosures around them, would be something that it shouldn't be hard to move forward with. One of my thoughts would be, if this group wanted to take a subset, down on that Carico Lake allotment, if there are 2 or 3 of these springs that had these past exclosures on them that are now in disrepair, if this group wanted to put forward, getting exclosures back on those again, Nevada Gold Mines would be happy on those allotments down there where we do have some vested interest, to sign with the BLM then a range improvement cooperative agreement to maintain those fences long term. So again, if that is something that we're interested in doing, I would support that, and we would be willing as the permittees to take over that long term maintenance on.
Well, that's really interesting, Chris, because those were all put in by the Bootstraps program when I was running the field program, and so I was very intimately involved in putting all those exposures in. And the one up there by up on top by the Greystone, by Greystone, you know, I looked at that as we drove by it on our, and that one's still in pretty good shape, really. But there's the one that we're talking about, and then there was one more quite large one. Might have been two adjacent that would be potential. I haven't been back to those, but would be potential projects. And you know, those were put in with you know, in cooperation with Johnny Filippini, with the Sea Ranch, and by a cooperative agreement between, or work between the BLM when Mike Stamm was the biologist there, and UNR and the Bootstraps program. So I'd be very surprised if the NEPA was not up to snuff at all those locations.
Mr.
Marshall?
Marshall,
Mhm.
how many of those exposures are out there?
I don't know off the top of my head. Jerry, how many, was it the 3 that you had installed with?
I think there's the 2 up by Greystone that are still in good shape, but then the one that we went to and on our field trip, and then there are there's 1, 2, 3. There's probably 3 or 4 more, all in the Carrico Lake allotment.
So that one down there, you're talking about that one. I call it Strawberry Summit, but it's right off the that secondary road there, and it's just everything's all knocked over, and there's a little pond and stuff on it.
Yep, that's the one, Gary. Yeah, that is correct.
So, do we have the ability on these exclosures to actually put in? Can we put in troughs? So can we exclose the spring head and substantially exclose the spring head, and then actually trough that water, the excess, or trough some water out?
So
I think that would make it a lot more complicated to get permitted.
Well, yeah, so any of those, Marshall, that were fenced originally, basically what Sam All was saying today is that we would more than likely be able to get fairly easy authorization to rebuild the fences. But you know, if we were looking at doing something like a spring box and a pipe to a trough outside, that would have to probably be a new analysis, because I don't think those projects were set up for that. You know, that one there at Strawberry already has a dirt pond. You know, what would probably be outside of the exclosure, so I don't think it's needed there. And the others we would just probably have to look at on a case by case basis. But I would caution if we want to move forward with those types of projects, that we don't go above and beyond what was originally done there. Otherwise, it'll probably get tied up in a bit more of a long time frame.
Okay.
Right. You know, I happened to have a conversation yesterday with Sam Alt for concerns on the Saval Ranch with the same type of projects, and he did make the comment that piping and off-site water really slow you down. But then that's exactly why I mentioned maybe possibly doing some armoring of some sort outside of the exposure in the stream bed. Add a little structure to the outflow.
Yeah, I agree. I think this spring, since we have a targeted location and it sounds like it wouldn't be too complicated to push through, I think this would be a good project we could focus on. So we could potentially fill out a form for that minus the costs and like starting dates. And then I can try and get with Sam next week, first thing, to get like an estimate of how much it would cost to install an exposure like this and kind of what the timeline would look like. And then I can, since we won't be able to approve this officially, like all said and done, I could send it in as a draft. So we can fill out what we can today and then just send that in as a draft once I get the extra information. Does that sound all right to everyone? Okay.
Well, the only thing I would add is if you're talking about more than just that strawberry spring, that's probably the smallest one of all those exposures that were built in Carrico Lake, and I don't know what size you would want to put there at that location. The others were all quite a bit larger, but you might be able to get some cost information also from Mark Fries. That's who the Conservation District has worked with Mark on administering these projects down at Smith Creek with the new and improved fencing that they use down there, and we're getting ready to do one up in the snowstorms also, but that one hasn't taken off yet because of I'm not exactly sure why, but they didn't get going on that one this year. But Mark can give you some good ideas on price, but it's not cheap. Not cheap.
Yeah.
I think
the projects we did this creek were came up to about $400,000.
Wow.
Do you know how many acres that was?
I could not tell you right off the top of my head, but they were I shouldn't even guess. But
okay, yeah, I can get with Mark and see.
They were concentrated to riparian areas that needed some improved protection.
There's one.
Yeah, I would defer to Mark to get the area. I just can't remember off the top of my head.
Okay. Okay. Can everyone see this form on my screen? The habitat project proposal.
I can.
Okay. Perfect. Okay. So this is all the information that they need from us. So I think we can fill most of this out today, I believe, other than, like I said, start date, funding, like expected costs. And what else? Yeah, I think we can get everything except those two things filled out. So start. And then do we want to just call this the Carrico allotment spring refurbishment or something like that?
Carrico. Well, do we need a motion on this part first?
I think we can go through and put this down, and then at the end we can open it for public comment if we have any attendees, and then we can vote to accept it, I guess, what we have put together or not.
I think we'd have to do, I'm just thinking of what the cost of this would be. Just with the way the cost of materials are and everything, you'd almost have to do it spring by spring.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how much money's in the total budget for this whole thing.
Yeah, I have to.
I mean, that even that small one, I can just think of that one. If that's say 400 feet of pipe rail right now,
Mm-hmm.
that's probably $40,000 in materials by itself.
Yeah, I agree with Marshall, and my thought would be to start with one small one, and then see how it works, and grow it from there.
Okay.
For the same reason, cost.
Okay, yeah, and I have put a trail camera on that spring a few times now too, so we have some monitoring already showing that just horses are there multiple times a day, every day, like day in, day out. So
what's the winter range use of deer in there?
I don't think it's super important that far down, but I'm not sure if that's just because there are so many horses in the area and all that PJ encroachment. So I think it has the potential, if they're already going to the Toyabe Fingers, I think it has the potential for them to kind of start using that area if we were to restore it. And I did get a few mule deer on there in the summer using that spring, but the only thing I got in the winter was cattle and horses and coyotes and things like that, but no ungulates. So we want to focus just on one to start then and use that as like a demo. I guess we could call this one the strawberry. Was it Strawberry Summit that you called that, Marshall?
That's what I've always known it as every time the time I've been here. I don't know if that's accurate or not. It's not marked on a map.
No, it doesn't have an official name or anything up there that I've seen, but if that's okay with everyone, we can just refer to it that way for simplicity's sake. And so the rank score, I believe we had that at a 4.3, correct? Or would that be horses? Would this be more horses, you think?
Well, it's kind of encompassing, because if you improve that water, then that should improve the riparian habitat around it potentially, and help keep the horses out of it. So, but you're not really removing the horses; you're just keeping them off of something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess first thing we need to say is which limiting factor is this assessing?
The limited water distribution. No.
And our top three were, where did this go? It was noxious weeds, wildland fire, and horses. So I kind of think if this would be more horses than anything else. Maybe we can come back to that. Just think about that one. And the needs assessment strategy. Tom, do you know specifically what that's asking? Is that just mitigation or?
Yeah, the needs assessment strategy would be, there's that other score sheet that if you need help refining or focusing on certain projects, you go through the needs assessment strategy.
Okay.
I think you guys seem to know enough and familiar enough that isn't necessary. So maybe just put, NA or something on that one.
Okay.
I'd probably go with, horses as far as the
rank score.
limiting factor. Yeah.
Okay. And that was a 5, I think, for everyone. And so this one it's kind of on the border of critical winter habitat. So I would say, is everyone okay with putting yes there?
Yeah.
And this would be a riparian area. So I would say project duration. I think actually implementing it will be 1 year. I'm not sure if we need to put how long we'd like it to be maintained.
Another question just came into my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Marshall, do we have another spring in the area that it doesn't necessarily have to be exposure? Do we have another one kind of like in a similar habitat type? Maybe similar spring outflow. I mean, even in that area, there's other springs as well. I just don't know what their water flow is, but that we can use. So you got to control, like, okay, we know that. So this one's kind of the end for us is the fact that it's already had an exposure there before, so that gets us the ability to do the project. but we know it's been degraded by horses, to where we can say, okay, this one's been degraded by horses, and we got another one over here that's been degraded by horses. And we're monitoring, you know, with the cameras, this one that we didn't improve and this one that we have improved or repaired the improvements as a control. And that could be almost be another project. I would, wasn't there monitoring or something like that, or studies for a project type?
Yeah.
That way, like with what Jerry is saying, like using it as an example, but if we don't have anything to compare it to, it's hard to, something in a similar spot, kind of, we don't really have a direct comparison to actually show, hey, this works, because we've got another one that's not working that we didn't do anything to.
Yeah, there is another spring, not very far down the road, I believe it's called Dry Canyon or Dry Creek or Dry something or
Yes.
other.
Oh, yep. I know exactly.
And it's slightly different as to where it pops out of the ground, but it's, you know, in similar condition as to the one we looked at on that tour.
Maybe we could do that as a project, as a monitoring, to compare the two of them.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, I don't know, you know, I don't know if Sarah, you think that in some way helps this process or not, but I mean, it's definitely not going anywhere, and I mean, it's definitely getting year-round horse use as well.
Yeah, and I absolutely agree that monitoring another area that isn't exposed would help. I'm not sure it would need a proposal, because I'm not sure it would need any funding if we're just going to do monitoring. But we could always add it in the comments that we'd like to install this exclosure and then do some monitoring after the fact of this site and then that Dry Creek area to see how things change, if they change, if horses just still get in there, you know, that type of thing. So yeah, I think we can definitely include a control in there of sorts. Yeah, good point. And so I'm guessing, since we're going to be monitoring this will be kind of a 4+ year type project. At least.
Yeah, I don't know on that project duration if that's really what they're looking for, or if it's, you know, it's going to take 4+ years to spend the money.
Oh, right.
I mean, I would sure think this would be a 1 year, but being the first go around, Sarah, I'm just not sure what they're looking for there.
Right. Yeah, and I'm sure, I mean, since this will go in as a draft, I'm sure we can refine it again if they have questions or anything like that. Okay, and so population trend, I think it's just following the statewide trend, decreasing. NEPA, there is, so those, did he say those were still in existence?
So Sam seemed to think that they probably had all the records in the file for those. It would just take some digging for them to find it. So I would say that NEPA status would be completed, but again, I don't want to speak for the BLM, but that from the conversation I had with him earlier today, that sure seemed like what he thought it was.
Okay, and I can definitely double check on that and change it if necessary.
I think you froze, Sarah, if you're trying to talk and can hear us.
I will. I'll just put yes for now and double check if that needs to be changed. Okay, so partners in this, I believe we'd need to partner with BLM, correct?
Right.
Is that in Eureka County or Lander County?
Lander.
Should be Lander.
Yeah,
Then-
so the Lander Conservation District would partner, would be interested in being a partner.
Okay. And then NGM, you said would be willing to take over maintenance, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. In kind. And then I don't believe we'd be asking for funding. Would we be asking for funding or just partnering from other sources besides this program?
Okay.
I would say the conservation district would more than likely be willing to participate in funding.
Okay.
I don't know about in kind. It's a $200,000 project, but
Mhm.
Again, Sarah, I think some of that stuff you can put, to be determined or, being looked into. I think unless it's pretty solid commitments for funding, we don't necessarily need to put anything in there for the initial submission.
Okay. And this is a definite yes. I'll need to add text when I get my text editor, but so additional species that I'll add would be sage grouse, checker, pronghorn,
Elk.
elk.
As being facetious.
There were bobcat tracks there on that spring when we were there. So.
Oh yeah, bobcats, mountain lions.
Coyotes. I think what else? I did get a jackrabbit on the camera.
Non-game species.
Yeah. Non-game. Okay, so I think we can put et cetera too. So sage grouse, pronghorn, checker, bobcat, coyote, mountain lion, rabbits, other non-game species. Any big ones I'm missing? Will project expand knowledge of the mule deer population or mule deer habitat? I would say probably.
I'm going to argue with you. I'm going to say yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
I always like to leave a little bit of uncertainty in there.
Yeah.
I'd say this could increase connectivity between habitats.
Yes.
Access for public hunting.
Yes.
Yes. Monitoring land.
Just really quick, Tom, do you recall from our Area 7 one, what did we decide they were trying to ask on that access for public hunting? Was it is this project increasing access or just was there access to the project to public hunting?
I think the interpretation is it, doing something on the landscape where hunters can access it, or, or is it being done someplace where sportsmen aren't going to be able to access it anyway?
Okay, great. So I think you're right, Sarah. Yes is the correct answer.
Okay. And then project monitoring plan, is that an official plan or is that not yet completed, meaning it will be completed?
Yeah, I guess
that would be the cameras, wouldn't it? The plan, we could do the plan for the cameras.
Yeah, I just wasn't sure. Did we need like an official monitoring plan put together or just one?
I think for this exercise, you can put not yet completed, maybe down in the comments below, say, at this point will be limited to trail cameras or.
Any other teams involved? I don't know how to just put this twice. Changes both of them. This is TBD. I'm gonna leave that blank. Okay, so funding sources would be, Tom, is this just the Mule Deer Enhancement Program Fund? Does it have a special name?
Well, there is no such animal. So funding sources, again, I think for this project would be TBD, because this type of thing, you know, is you can pursue whatever kind of funding you want. Mule Deer Foundation, Heritage, pot of money, you know, there's a million different pots out there to go after, but
Okay.
there isn't one that has already been identified. I think TBD is appropriate.
Okay, so essentially this proposal form is just taken to the Oversight Committee, and then they give you the okay or not to pursue a certain type of funding for it.
Yes, what they'll do is they'll go through all the team's project proposals, prioritize those statewide, basically say, you know, we are supporting the pursuit of these projects through this Mule Deer Enhancement Program team process. It doesn't mean that people with the team or outside of the team or whatever couldn't pursue some of these outside of the Mule Deer Enhancement Program process, but these are the ones the Oversight Committee is saying, yes, we're approving these to be pursued through this particular process. But then it's up to, just like any other project, just trying to chase down as many pots of money as possible
Okay, gotcha.
to pay for them.
Okay. All right, well, that simplifies things a little bit, because then in the subsequent proposals, we can put as much detail as we want about this. So this step is basically just getting it approved or not by the Oversight Committee.
Just for general knowledge, I'm not suggesting that you write this down, but you know, the Lander County commissioners are very generous with the conservation district, and therefore the Lander County Conservation District does have quite a bit of funding available, and we do have a hard time having people come forward to with projects for us in Lander County. So I you know, can't make a firm commitment, but I think they would be very very interested in this project. And also the seed money that we've been getting from the county for the last few years was initially started while sage grouse were being evaluated, and it was sage grouse habitat enhancement money, but we've gone back to the county, who again generously allowed us to change that to wildlife habitat enhancement project funding, and so I wanted everybody to be aware of that in case you have other projects that were, as Tom mentioned, we're outside of this process that might be addressed. And so that's just wanted everybody to be aware of that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's good to know. Thanks, Jerry. Okay, so I will try and get a better estimate of costs on this on Monday, and then I can.
In that regard, I have a question for the others in the group that have visited that site. My question is, how big of a exclosure would everyone else envision at that site? That I think we want to have a fairly good idea of that before we try to get an estimate of what it's going to cost.
Right. So
And I'm actually doing some measuring in Google Earth in the background. I'll tell you in a second how big it is.
Oh. I was just going to do the same thing, Chris. So yeah, would we
Fresh.
want to include just that top portion that was fenced previously, or would we want to expand it a little bit?
Everybody has to.
I think expanding is better, but I don't know if the expanded footprint is what was cleared at BLM. So I think that's a question for Sam Alt. So that's my only caution about expanding it. But ideally, I think you would expand it right down to that bottom pond. But
Just
I think we'd ask Sam that question.
close that here in just a moment. There you go.
Yeah, and we'd want him to definitely check the NEP on that, because when those were built, you know, we just sent a crew out and said, you know, just protect the water source, but don't like up there at Greystone, you'll notice that quite a bit of the water is on the outside of the exposures. We weren't trying to exclude livestock from the water source at all. So what I'm getting at is there was some flexibility, and my guess is that the NEPA that was done on that may be bigger, maybe a bigger area, for a bigger area, a larger area than what was actually constructed.
And then comments that we wanted to add to this. If I can type, that would be helpful.
I had a question on, with redoing this enclosure, is the fencing and the piping going to be done around it in a way that that hopefully will hold up to the horses better? Are they going to be able to, because if it's their only place to water, I mean, how much pressure are they going to put on it? Is that something that should be of concern with this, with re-enclosing it?
That's a really good question. The exposures that were built down at Smith Creek are pretty stout. I think with, you know, minimal maintenance, they'd hold up a lot better than the jack rail that was there now.
Yeah. And Jerry, do they cement those into the ground?
No, they're just driven. They are driven into the ground. And Mark Freese would know how they've been holding up with any pressure. The ones that they put in, they've been in for, I think, 2 years now.
Okay.
So there's another question for Mark Freese for you.
How they hold up. Okay.
Hey, Sarah, the existing fence is about 210 feet. So that's what was originally there.
Okay. 210. Okay. Modern.
And sorry, if you were to extend that down kind of to that pond that's down below, it would take about, I don't know, 360 feet of pipe to do that.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, it's always, I think the hardest thing is getting the details, like how many feet and how much material you'll actually need. I think please that and Are there any other comments we'd like to add, or is there anything, I'll probably go back and reword this to make it flow a little better, but is there anything else you'd like to add, or?
Exclude.
At the moment, I think the next step is just to get that verification from Sam Alt that we could move forward with this in a timely manner.
Okay. And so I think what we can do we want to fill out a couple of other proposals and then make a motion to accept them under the condition that details X, Y, and Z get filled in before they're submitted? Or do we want to go through each one and do a motion on each?
I think
Do
we
we
could
have
fill out.
any- I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Marshall.
Do we have any more, the Jenna Rim seating? Is that kind of an unknown with what's going on right now with exactly how much is seated or who's seating it or how it's being seated? Is that
I
something
know.
that,
Yeah, I
Well,
believe that all of the work has been done on private land thus far. So I think we could go in and basically just propose to fill in those other like square mile parcels on public land surrounding that project.
and
So
then
we could-
it's like 100, sort of like 105, 110 an acre total for the whole thing, right?
yeah, so it would. Cost estimate. Yeah, so between 70 to 90 for the reseeding and then 10 to 15 for herbicide application. That'd be 80 to 105.
Aaron, do you know, is that project on Indian Creek? Is that the Indian Creek drainage?
That I believe is separate. I thought Indian Creek was further down
Okay.
this way. That might not be, or I'm sorry, I'm not sharing my screen.
Say we can't see your map.
I will share that. I forgot you have to share separate windows in Zoom. Okay, so I believe that Indian Creek is more down. Every time I turn it off, it turns back on. Is more down like Hilltop Canyon area.
Yeah,
So-
that's yeah, you're making me dizzy, but that is it.
I believe that's where all that work took place. So that's
Okay.
a little ways off from Argenta.
Okay.
So we'd be looking up here. And then I guess we just need to figure out kind of what a reasonable ask is acreage wise for filling in some of these public areas.
Are there any guzzlers or other man-made big game, anything like that needs improved? That's damaged or anything like that? Something that's existing that we could do improvements to, similar to the spring project?
I mean, there's a few small game guzzlers, but I think all of the big game guzzlers in Area 15 are in good shape right now.
Okay.
There is one up on Argenta.
It's just north of
Right.
the radio towers.
Yeah, it's right here. And that one, I know once this habitat improvement is done, I think then we can probably talk about putting another guzzler up there. But I think until we have actual forage and everything for deer and pronghorn, it'd be nice not to attract them over with more water sources but I think eventually it'd be good to get another guzzler up here. There is another one over on the Crescent Valley side. I believe that's farther down here.
No, it's farther south. There's
Yeah.
actually a Crescent Valley. It's keep going south. Keep going south. There's the, all right, stop. So to the left, go straight north. Straight north, north, north.
This is of the mine, right?
Yeah, you're just right up in there somewhere, right on the foothills.
Yeah, there's a big game guzzler up there, and then there's some small game guzzlers tucked up in here. I can never find them exactly on the map.
You're almost, it's right there where that road on the north end of your picture goes. Right, go at the very top of what we're seeing on the share screen, right in the middle.
Right.
There's a little bit of a road. Well, there was. I think.
Oh, you know what? I can turn on my guzzlers. I think that would be the most helpful. Yep. It's right there. Yeah. That's a little farther south than where they're doing restoration. So yeah, I think a guzzler up here would be a good idea in the future. It would just be good to make sure there's actually forage for everything we're going to be bringing over in there. So yeah, do we want to move on to talking about this project and just putting together a quick proposal, or how do we want to do this? Do we want to just vote on everything at the end?
I think we can probably vote on everything at the end. You know, my only caution would be if we still needed to hash out more details on any of them. I mean, I really think the other groups I've been involved with, you know, we've called a second meeting to actually have that vote on the final proposal.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, would that be feasible for everyone? I know a lot of you were gone Tuesday. I mean, could we get a quorum together just to basically say yay or nay before formal submission?
I'll jump in real quick here. Unfortunately, if in order to have a meeting by Wednesday, it's a Thursday deadline, the agenda would have had to been posted today.
That's right. I forgot about those rules.
Yeah, so we're kind of.
So we pretty much got to kind of do a final vote today then?
I think we can do a conditional vote. We can approve it as long as they're submitted as a draft instead of the formal approved version. So we can approve everything we have on there today and then say we just need to add like estimated costs, exact locations, things like that if we haven't chosen locations on some of these. So I think we can do it like a partial vote and just make sure everyone's at least on the same page, but they'll still have to probably be submitted as drafts. Am I interpreting that right, Tom?
Yeah, that was the direction we got from the chief of game. So I would go ahead and do that. And then there may be an opportunity once they kind of go through their statewide prioritization between now and the January commission meeting, which they might meet in conjunction with, kind of iron some of those details out and provide them the fully approved official version, but allow them to prioritize, you know, tentatively prioritize stuff based on drafts. Believe me, this won't be the only group that's sending drafts in.
Okay, I will save this one. Okay, so for the Argenta project, let me see what Jeremy had. So their title for the project was Argenta Rim Mulder Enhancement Project. So we can just use that title and say expansion. If that's good with everyone. And I want to say, so this would be both wildland fire and noxious and invasive weeds. And I want to say we had those ranked at 4.3 on average. And that stays the same. Everyone can see this form, right? I'm not just looking at it. I'm not pointing at things people can't see anymore. And so this would be.
Could this be 2 to 3 years? Because you got to do 1 year, you have to kill it.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be that. And I think habitat type should be sagebrush steppe. Check riparian. And that would be, we're proposing to do it on the BLM land. NEPA status, there was an EA that we can add on to. I'm guessing that counts as NEPA being completed. It expands. So is NGM already partnering on this project with any private parcels up there?
We are not.
Okay. Do you have private parcels up on Argenta?
We do.
Okay. Would you like to add those in? We don't have to officially do that.
Yeah, I mean, potentially, my biggest, and again, for the record, have conflicting interests here in that, I'm a bit concerned. We rely on that Argenta Rim for some winter grazing use, and expanding on the BLM ground. I'm just not sure if there's going to be rest required after the seeding is done, or not. So at the moment, I don't think we're looking to do any of our private parcels up there, but
Okay.
fully support the type of project this is, but obviously have some reservation as well. Just wanting to make sure what impacts to us.
Okay. And then would Lander County Conservation District be interested in this at all?
I would think that they more than likely would. I know that they would definitely entertain a proposal.
Okay. All right. And then for this one, I would say probably all the same additional species that we listed before, correct? When it asks about additional species benefit.
Yeah, I think it'd be the same.
Okay. And that'll expand knowledge of the population, habitat, definitely increase connectivity. There's access for public hunting. I don't think we have a monitoring plan completed yet, at least this team. And then all of this is still TBD. So that actually, we could probably put this in because I believe that in talking with Jeremy, usually they start spraying. When did I put that? In September?
Yeah, September is the right month.
Okay. So I would say September, I guess the earliest would be September 2022. We'll just put September 1st as a placeholder. And then seeding would take place the following September through January. I think if we do drill seeding, that would be September, and then kind of any time in the winter would be aerial. So I'll just put January 2023.
What are they looking to seed up there? I assumed it was just kochia, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, it's a wildlife seed mix of grasses, kochia, and sagebrush.
So if it's mainly grasses or if it's mainly sagebrush and kochia, I assume they're broadcasting.
Mhm. Yeah, I think they're broadcasting with a fixed wing. So we'll just go with the later date. January. We'll just
24.
we'll go to the end.
January
24.
24. Right?
2024. Oh, so it would be.
They do that, and then it wouldn't be until the next year.
Right.
They'd have to let it sit for a year.
Thank you. Hard to keep the years straight. Okay. And then how many acres do you think would be reasonable to shoot for? Because I believe from their proposal, I can give you an estimate for what it would be to do 3 of those square mile parcels.
It'd be 67,000 a section
Okay.
at 105.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so theirs was about, their total project funding was about 150,000. So would we want to start small or go all in? I can pull a map up again.
Can you put a range in there, say, and then in the notes put, 1 to 3 sections? And then the cost would be, 70 to 210,000, basically.
Yeah, we can do that. And then I guess if this gets approval, then when we do the actual proposal, we can talk a bit more with Jeremy to see kind of which sections and how many filling in would be, I guess, most beneficial. Then, so what was that range again, Marshall?
My math came out, I got 67,000 at 105 per acre. So it'd be 67 times 3 to 201, basically. So yeah, so 67 to 200,000.
Well, okay, I will just put for parcel proposing. Were we thinking 1 to 3, or did we want to do more than that? Or do you think just starting here would be a good point?
That covers quite a bit of that country, yeah.
Mm-hmm. What am I forgetting? Estimated project cost. Let's see if it lets me put a range in. It was 210, right?
Got that.
Yep, put a range in. Adjacent to. Is there anything anybody wants to add to this project form? All right. This one actually seems done. So we can actually probably approve this one if we want to tonight. Let me save this one. Okay. So that gives us, I think, a good start. We can submit up to 3 projects if we want to. So were there any others that anyone had in mind? Like, do we want to look into maybe fuel breaks anywhere? I think that one might take a little more delving into looking at maps and things like that. So I don't have any places off the top of my head right now, but if anybody else does, we can definitely go down that road. Okay. So I guess if nobody wants to discuss any other projects, we can go ahead and I guess I'll stop sharing and see if there are any. We have no participants, so I don't believe we need to break for public comment unless anybody on the panel wants to submit public comment. Okay, so I guess what we can do, we can do 2 separate motions. One to accept the Argenta proposal, and then we can submit that one as approved by the group. And then we can do a separate motion to accept what we've done on the Strawberry Summit proposal and submit it as a draft on the condition that the extra details are filled in about estimated costs and NEPA. So I will leave that out. If somebody wants to make a motion, we'll start with the Argenta Rim one.
What, before we do that, just one point of question, Sarah or Tom. I assume these votes, do they need to carry by unanimous vote or just by majority vote?
Majority vote.
Thanks.
Okay. So I guess I will make a motion to approve the Argenta Rim Mule Deer Enhancement Project expansion proposal for submission to the Oversight Committee.
I'll second.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say aye.
I
Okay,
will, I'm going to abstain from voting on that one just because it is on one of our allotments that we're currently operating on.
okay. Okay, so motion does pass. So that one, we can close the.
Oh, by the way, Sarah, Bert just texted me and asked that I say aye for him.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Okay. So then the next motion, I will reopen. I'm not sharing my screen anymore, am I? Okay. I won't reopen that one. Do you want me to pull up the other proposal form so you can look at it before we vote? Okay. All right, I will, I guess, make a motion to conditionally accept the Strawberry Summit Spring Exposure Project proposal on the condition that I speak with Sam Alt and Mark Fries to get more detail on project cost estimates and NEPA details.
Marshall
I'll
second.
second.
Okay, so all in favor, say aye.
I,
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say aye. Okay, motion passes. And we will submit that one as a draft. Okay, so the next item on the agenda we can move on to is public comment period. But since we have no public participants, I will just say raise your hand if you have public comment. And I see no virtual hands raised. So we can move on to the last item, which is future subcommittee meetings. And this will be for possible action. So this, again, I will probably, for ease of trying to schedule, just send out a doodle poll to see when people are available for the next meeting. So once I get these project proposals submitted, I don't know if we want to have another meeting to talk about these or just wait and have another meeting once we can get the horse specialist and some range specialists from BLM to talk about those other projects and bigger issues we were discussing at our previous meeting. And then that might give us a head start on getting projects together for next year's submission.
One question I have, Sarah, on these next steps, will there be a public meeting on all these proposals that have come in from around the state? Do you know how that process will actually play out?
Yeah, so I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Tom, that the commission at their next meeting, or the oversight committee at the next meeting, will look through these projects and rank them. Is that what's supposed to happen, Tom?
Yeah, that's the intention, is to have them go through, do their ranking. I don't know that they'll get it done in one meeting, but they may. And all those commission committee meetings are agendized public meetings, open, to all. It will be through the public, meeting, open meeting process for them as they're ranking and prioritizing.
Great.
When's that next meeting scheduled for, that they would be starting that process?
I will have to get back to you on that, Jerry, but it'll be in conjunction with the upcoming commission meeting, which is, I believe, the first weekend in November. So they typically do a lot of those committee meetings on the Thursday prior to the commission meeting. But we can send an email out to the group with the specific date and time.
It looks like they have it on the,
Oh, do they?
on the website for October 27th at 6
Oh,
p.m.
perfect.
I just happened to have
Close.
that page open.
Oh, so it's a little early. Perfect. Okay. No wonder they want these ASAP.
So my
Well,
question is, if they're going to have a meeting at the end of this in 2 weeks, and then possibly not get the ranking finished at that time, I mean, is there really any reason to have another meeting of this group in the near future?
No,
What would be the purpose? Until we know that they are done with their ranking and decisions.
Yeah, I agree. We can definitely just agree to maybe meet after they've made decisions and go from there.
My suggestion.
And then one thing I realized I forgot to do again was approve the minutes even though I added 2 minutes to approve this time. So we'll have to add that to the next agenda again. So one of these days I'll remember to do it. I had the right agenda printed out this time and I skipped right over it.
I think you actually have the prerogative to take things out of order, Sarah. So if you guys wanted to approve the January minutes or whichever minutes you have, might be get that done with, so we don't have to deal with it on the road.
Yeah, and I think the October minutes haven't gone out yet from our last meeting. So it'll just be approving the minutes from January. If we want to do that real quick. And would you like me to pull that up on my screen, or has everyone had a chance to look at those since the last meeting?
I looked at them.
Okay.
And I would make a motion to approve them.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say aye. All right. January 2021 meeting minutes are approved. And then we will have to do the October 4th minutes at the next meeting. Okay, so was there anything anybody wants to add to the agenda for next time, or just plan on waiting until we hear something and then schedule a meeting after that?
Yeah, I can schedule
after done.
Okay.
Then
Yeah,
schedule.
I think a meeting afterwards would be good just to hear how that process goes and plays out.
Okay, sounds good. So we just need to motion to adjourn.
Marshall. Make the motion.
Seconded by Chris.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, say aye. All right, meeting has adjourned at 5:50 p.m. Thanks, everyone, and we'll be